I personally am pleased to be here because at last, a Frenchman on top of London, right? Typical French arrogance. Anyway, let's get into it. So we're going to talk about phishing. First, we'll have to get through the usual marketing thing. Hopefully, it's not too long, not too boring. So this is us. This is Vade. We're specialized in email security. We've been in this business for over 15 years now. We obviously work through channel, through distribution. We have an MSP-friendly product, just like all the other vendors here. What's make us different, though, we also work with internet services providers and other vendors, and both of them are using some pieces of our technology to protect their customers. So that's why we are now protecting 1.4 billion mailboxes. It's fancy as a marketing slide, but it really brings value to you and your clients in at least two different ways. Number one, obviously, the threat intel. Because the larger the footprint, then the more likely you are to identify, qualify, and block threats. And this is typically what we've been doing for a long time. And second of all, I'm going to use the word everybody's using for the AI piece. AI is as good as your data. So it requires a lot of data and some good data to do the training, whether it's machine learning or NLP or all the other AI stuff. So with 1.4 billion mailboxes, we have a lot of threat intelligence pieces, which we use to do the training part of our AI technologies. So in our product portfolio, we have one solution, which is available in the Giacom marketplace, which is VadeFrame 365. So we use the Microsoft Graph API to connect to your client's tenant. It has an MSP cross-tenant view for you to do threat investigation and response. And soon next year, we'll have the equivalent for Google Workspace, which will be on the market. I'm just going to go through that really quickly because we want to talk about the interesting stuff. What is the context for this presentation? So Vade is 250 employees, and 40 to 50 of them are working in threat intelligence, either on the research side or in a security operations center. So that's a significant portion of our employees working in that. And we have a small team which is specialized in tracking cyber criminal adversaries for a couple of reasons. And the obvious one is to understand how they operate. So that, for instance, if they're about to release a new phishing kit, that we know beforehand how it's been built, how it behaves, and then we can block it from the get-go and not reactively. That's one of the reasons. Also, we want to understand their motives, how they're making money, how they're transferring the money, and so on. And so that team is also identifying new or techniques making a comeback that those cyber criminals are using. So for instance, some of trends that we've seen this year, it's the use and abuse of legitimate services to encapsulate phishing links. So there was one with Google Translate. There was another platform, which is Greatness, which is phishing as a service, which has been on the market for a while, which now offers QR code phishing as a service, for instance. So we're starting to see some of the trends, which we'll talk about in a minute, which are, one, cyber criminals are definitely paying attention to what the businesses are doing, what are the global trends. That's one. And two, they will layer different techniques, different solutions, and a lot of them are legitimate, to build credibility for their target, and also to make our lives harder to detect and block those attacks. So let's talk about some of the recently used techniques. And I know some people are going to say, email, isn't that for dinosaurs? It's a dying technology. Well, email is actually #1 means of communication used in businesses still to this day. And for cyber criminal, it's kind of the holy grail for a lot of different reasons. Number one, it's free. Number two, it does not require any technical knowledge to implement email. Even my mother can send an email, and she does that frequently. Number three, it's not secure per design. Anybody here can create an email account and pretends to be whomever they want to be, right? And number four, it brings you to the heart, to the core of the company. I always use the same. Maybe it's lame, but it's the same comparison. It's much easier to trick somebody into opening an attachment or clicking on a link than it is to break into a 0-day on a Palo Alto firewall. Both accomplish the same thing. You get into the company, more or less, one way or another. But it's much easier to get somebody to open your email and believe you than it is to break into a firewall. That's a fact. And that's why email has remained for years now the #1 threat vector. In any scenario of attack, email will be involved at some point, whether it is to collect data, for the first step of an attack, and then there will be some lateral movements. For some lateral movements, we always see email being involved in cyber attacks. Let's look at those techniques. So let's start with QR code phishing or quishing. Fairly new, right? Something that is really making the headlines this year. Why is that? Quite simple. Again, cyber criminals are following trends. And you might be familiar, some security solutions are actually, for instance, asking for you to do some operations using QR codes. Or even more generally, a lot of websites, services, businesses are using QR codes to operate their business, right? You go to a restaurant, you want to check the menu. After COVID, sometimes they have a QR code, or I don't have my badge here, but there's a QR code on it as well. So again, cyber criminals are keeping track of that, and they noticed it. So we have seen, and all the other vendors in the market, if you're reading the news, you think it's not just Vade, all the other vendors have seen that, a rise in the QR code. And the other thing, which is interesting with QR code, a lot of them are being opened with our cell phone. And a lot of employees that do not necessarily have a professional, right, or business cell phone, they just use their personal cell phone, and it may not come with the same level of security than their corporate cell phone. Again, it's something cyber criminal will take advantage on. So those are some of the reasons why. And yes, there's a Microsoft logo, no knock against Microsoft, but sometimes to put even more credibility, cyber criminals will go as far as putting a brand logo. So again, if I'm John Smith from the HR department, I have not a lot of cybersecurity knowledge, I'm going to see an email which looks legitimate, inquiring about 2FA validation or activation with a QR code. I have all the reasons in the world to believe it's an actual and legitimate email. Open redirect. Definitely not something new, but just like in fashion, right? Cyber criminal techniques, they come and they go. So it's something we've seen a lot this year as well. Open redirect, if you're not familiar with the concept, it's fairly simple. A lot of websites or web services have internal redirection mechanism. So you go to from one page to another, for instance. Fairly simple. Some of them, some very famous, very legitimate, they don't have security checks on those redirection mechanisms. So you can create a link which will start with Google Translate, YouTube, Baidu. This one is with Baidu, and a lot of other legitimate services. And encapsulated in that link, you will have a redirection to your phishing page. So our friend John Smith from the HR department went through a phishing awareness training where he learned that he should check the link before clicking on the link, and he will see that the link goes to Google Translate, YouTube, Baidu, or a lot of other services. But when he will click on that link, it will actually bring him to the phishing page. That's another trend that we've seen coming back this year. Custom phishing page. So that's a login page that's coming from a phishing campaign which took place a couple of months ago. We've redacted a lot of it, obviously. But what was interesting and scary at the same time, the cyber criminals were actually pulling the company information, the legitimate company information, as in the company's logo, as in the company's background picture. They were pulling that from over the internet to make their phishing page credible on the fly. So that was for a hospital, but within that same week, we saw that same campaign affecting a nonprofit, for instance, and the phishing page would have the nonprofit logo on it with the end user's email address already pre-filled. So all they have to do is to put their password. Again, for the cyber criminals, it helps them to establish credibility because I'm not an expert in cybersecurity. I'm being asked to log in or re-log in or open a document. It might be my latest pay stub. It might be my pay raise for next year because definitely we're going to have those in a couple of weeks. Anyway, so I'm likely to click on the link, and then I will see a login page which I'm familiar with because it has my company's logo, my company background picture, and my email address is already pre-filled. So when you see it in real time, I know it kind of loses a bit of its effect because everything is redacted, but it's actually really impressive because you can really see, oh, wow, it's the company's official login page, right? So this is a trend. Again, it's not necessarily new, something we have seen for 2-3 years, but we can see it recurring more and more. And I guess what's even more interesting, we used to see that for larger end clients, larger groups, and it's definitely a technique you can see today targeting an SMB organization with less than 100 employees. I'm not telling you that to scare you, it's a fact. A lot of the techniques that you're seeing here are being used against small, even sometimes very small businesses. And the anti-bot protection abuse. So again, no knock against Cloudflare. They're a legitimate business. They're DDoS protection, among other things, a service. So there's well-known brand and service, but their service sometimes can be abused. If you look up on the internet, the oldest reference we saw was 2016, so it's not something new, but definitely this year, we've seen a lot of phishing page hidden behind this kind of mechanism. And it's interesting for many reasons. Number one, again, John Smith from HR, or let's play a new character. I'm Susie from accounting, right? I've had some level of cybersecurity training, phishing awareness training. I get onto this page, I'm being asked to wait for some security checks. I have to click on the box, and eventually will tell me I'm in a secured environment. It will reinforce her sense of, oh, all right, that looks like a credible website. So that's number one reason why it's so used right now. And number two, for a cybersecurity vendor, when we're going to crawl the internet and analyze the pages, it's going to make our life harder because some of the, let's call it the least advanced detection mechanism, they might not be able to bypass those security checks, and rightfully so because it's a DDoS protection mechanism. So purposely, it's not meant to be bypassed by an automatic request or crawler. So it will make our lives harder for us to analyze the content of the actual page afterwards, which will be the phishing page. So again, it's a trend that we've seen coming back heavily this year and even in the SMB space. But I guess more interestingly, what is a very tangible trend is the layering and the combination of these techniques. You can assume at least 3 out of 4 of these techniques or others, there will be plenty of other techniques, are going to be used in a single attack. Again, to establish credibility for the target so that he or she feels they're in a safe environment, in a secured website, legitimate service. And also, once again, for the security services to be not as successful in detecting that it's a malicious attempt that they're analyzing. Now, some of these things might be, significantly challenging to implement for a cyber criminal, right? Which is why some services are available on the internet for cyber criminals not necessarily having a lot of technical skills to use and implement these techniques. So just 2 examples here that we wanted to share with you. Again, nothing new, but there are some evolving trends that I wanted to share with you. Phishing as a service. So this is a screenshot from a phishing as a service named Greatness, which we've been tracking for a while now. Just log in, right? You manage to register some way, somehow, and you log in. And then on that service, you can pick the brand, or sometimes even more solo than that, the service or the type of phishing attempt which you will send. You obviously define your targets, right? You put the email address of the person whom you want to send your phishing attack to, and that's it. So they might take a commission out of the money that you will get, or you may pay them directly with Bitcoins. It depends on the phishing as a service platform. But you're not required to implement any phishing page or phishing kit or send an email yourself. They will take care of that. And we've released an update on Greatness recently, and I think I was mentioning it earlier. There are no supporting QR code phishing. And they're not the only phishing as a service platform offering that. So again, cyber criminals are really literally following the trends and the habits of people. For instance, next year, I'm just going on a tangent a little bit right here. But next year, the Olympics will be hosted in France. I can assure you we'll see a lot of phishing attempts which will use the Olympics as the backdrop, as the context. Get some tickets for the 100-meter finale, for instance. I'm quite sure we will see some of these. So again, cyber criminals, they're just going to use any trend they will see to create their content in their phishing attempt. So that's the login page, and that's the kind of content it can generate, just to let you know kind of how far it can go. So again, it's redacted. They put some brand logos to establish credibility. That's a fake invoice. They can generate that kind of content as well. But again, of course, you cannot see the content, but you can see it's fairly credible. It looks like a real invoice. So our friend Susie or our friend John, when they're going to see that, they're going to think, oh, wow, that might be a real invoice. I may need to open it. I may need to click on that link and log in to see the content of the invoice. And another thing that we wanted to share with you, it's called scammer. Scammer is the slang for phishing kits. What I like, not sure that's the most appropriate term, but still, what I like about scammer is how they advertise them. So that's coming from a Telegram chat group. And basically, they're just advertising them as any other vendor would. So they're just going to highlight what are like the key feature, outstanding feature available. So you can see here this one. It comes with the anti-bot protection by Cloudflare. Others will say, we support Apple Pay, which drives me crazy personally because a lot of websites I like to use, they don't support Apple Pay yet. A lot of phishing kits do support Apple Pay. Why? Because it makes it easier for the cyber criminals using them just to get the money instantly, right? I'm just opening on my cell phone because a lot of them will say we're responsive in their ad. So I will open the phishing link on my cell phone and I will say, oh, okay, I need to pay this. All right, I'm just going to pay with Apple Pay, done. Cyber criminal will get their money instantly and then they can launder it really easily with PayPal in multiple countries. So that's really interesting. Some will come with proof. Right? So they will show you a proof that it's working. And just so you know, on the market right now, a scammer or a phishing kit is gonna be for sale for 80 to 150 pounds GBP. Right? That's kind of the market value we're seeing. And generally, it's a limited sale. Right? So the fisher who will put that on the market will say, all right, I'm just going to sell 5 of them. There's a lot of stealing, actually, among fishers. They will grab each other's phishing kits and codes and will just rebrand them. And so they will say, all right, this is 100% new phishing kit. It's 80 quids, and I will only sell 5 of them. Just contact me and pay me in Bitcoins. That's it. Again, if I'm a cyber criminal here, the level of technical skills required to implement those will be much lower than if I had to build everything from scratch, right? So basically, they're providing the tools for any street thug, for lack of a better word, to go into the phishing business. All right, that's it for me. I'm happy to take questions. If you want to know more about Vade, we're right there. Thanks for your attention.